Chair and Honourable Senators, it's a privilege to speak to you today, an opportunity that I will use to share the perspective echoed by many fellow volunteer engagement leaders across Canada. We work daily to engage 13.3 million volunteers who strengthen every single Canadian community. As you know, there are barriers to volunteerism, and they come in many forms. Some don't volunteer because they weren't asked, they don't know how to find volunteer opportunities, or they aren't aware of the benefit and importance to their community. Those new to Canada may not understand how volunteerism is so integral to our culture or how it can help them connect to their community. Others experience financial barriers. And then we have volunteer engagement leaders and nonprofits, and we don't have the resources to effectively engage volunteers or expand our organization's reach in order to deliver on missions and build strong communities. Given these various challenges, strengthening volunteerism nationally demands a multifaceted approach. I'll break down 3 primary challenges that I see and how they may be overcome. The first one is investing in volunteer engagement leaders. In my perspective, the highest priority for strengthening volunteerism is investment in the overextended nonprofits and their leaders. Alex leads a team of 800 volunteers in a mid-sized charity. He knows the potential of his volunteer programs, expanded community services, more effective training for his volunteers, and acknowledging their efforts through a meaningful recognition program. He struggles daily, though, just to meet his most pressing team needs. While plans for risk management, a stronger volunteer culture, and personalized support are left undeveloped. As a result, volunteers endure a diminished experience and may lose interest. Programs can't grow to better serve communities, and the pressure Alex is under is so great that there can be a toll on both his physical and mental health. Alex faces these challenges alone daily, but increasingly, he's not alone in that this plight is far too common. Some solutions that I'd like to propose are develop funding solutions for nonprofits for stable volunteer engagement staff. Volunteers depend on training, supervision, evaluation, and recognition. Corporations invest heavily in HR because they understand the considerable return on investment. Nonprofits benefit no less from similar dedicated volunteer engagement staff, but funding agencies often don't cover staffing to support volunteer programs. This leads to volunteer engagement leaders who endure long hours for little pay, and significant turnover can be a predictable result. Second, encourage organizations to collaborate and eliminate duplication of services. Third, fund organizations and programs that equip volunteer engagement leaders. Volunteer centers support community leaders and connecting them with prospective volunteers. Volunteer management college programs prepare graduates to lead and grow the sector. Professional associations raise industry standards, provide networking, education, and advocacy for the necessity of volunteer professional roles. And sector guiding agencies such as Imagine Canada and Volunteer Canada set crucial standards to educate and inform the charitable sector. The second recommendation, or challenge, my apologies, is remove barriers and provide incentives to volunteers. Research and feedback on compensation and incentives for volunteers has yielded conflicting perspectives. A 2013 Volunteer Canada study states volunteers indicated that more breaks, reimbursement of expenses, and access to organizations' events are not important factors in how organizations could more effectively engage them. Yet, this conflicts with accounts of low-income volunteers unable to afford transit, expensive equipment needed by search and rescue volunteers, or a volunteer adaptive ski instructor struggling to cover gas for long weekly drives to and from the hill. For many, the expenses are too great, meaning their time and talents are unavailable to the community. I know one woman we'll call Jane, who volunteers at the MS Society's reception desk each week. She truly understands the needs of clients, as she too lives with MS. Her dedication is remarkable in that it takes her over an hour each way on transit while using a mobility aid. She confided in me that the travel puts a strain on her both financially and physically, but volunteering gives her a sense of community, relieves her feelings of isolation, and helps her developing new skills. She proudly gives back to the organization that has supported her and in turn supports others living with MS. No longer able to work, she risks jeopardizing her disability insurance by volunteering, which could be falsely perceived as being able to return to work. Solutions I might recommend: reimburse volunteer-related expenses, such as search and rescue equipment, which might take the form of tax credits, vehicle mileage for volunteer firefighters, and direct credit for return transit tickets. Just as tax deductions are provided to donors and registered charities, offer an earned tax deduction to volunteers who generously give their time and talents. Finally, rather than the current practice of discouraging or even penalizing volunteers, consider incentives, possibly an employment insurance top-up for those who volunteer while unemployed or on sick leave. The third recommendation and challenge is public education and engagement campaign. Studies show that many people do not volunteer because they weren't asked, don't know where to go, or are simply unaware of the need in their community. Possible solution: a national communication strategy to highlight the impact of volunteerism on community building, its role in Canadian society, and the benefits to the volunteer. Second, develop awareness building campaigns in secondary schools and in organizations serving new immigrants, two segments of the population that will certainly benefit from learning how volunteerism can help with integration into the community, learning new skills, and building Canadian work experience. These recommendations will help strengthen volunteerism in the charitable sector, without which we will doubtless face a social deficit. As the 2016 Imagine Canada report states, unlike a fiscal deficit, the social deficit will not reveal itself in red numbers on a balance sheet. Instead, it will appear as an accumulation of unmet needs, in growing wait lists for social services, and increasingly overburdened charities and nonprofits, overworked staff, and volunteers. In short, a social deficit will appear as an inability of Canadian charities to meet the social, cultural, and environmental needs of Canadians, and a slow but perceptible erosion of Canada's quality of life. You, me, and every Canadian enjoys the benefits of the strong volunteer community. The new Canadian, the isolated senior, the medical researcher, the lost hiker, even the community gardener. There are critical resources in every community from coast to coast that depend on volunteers who urgently need our support. I call on the committee to remove barriers to volunteerism, to advocate and educate Canadians on the impact and benefits of volunteering, and to commit to investing in the volunteer sector. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Ms. Jakop. Mr. Chalin.